In this tutorial I show you how to make a simple adaptation of Space Invaders. I will explain the sprite editor to make your own image or how to upload your own image from a file in the editor. Next we will add controls to the player object and give the player the power to shoot bullets. I will also implement enemies, which will slowly crawl towards the player and shoot at random positions. We will also add a functional UI that stores the score and check if the player is dead or alive and will restart the game on itself. To start, open the game engine, click on New and choose for drag and drop. Type in an appropriate title and click on Save to continue. We start by creating a sprite for the ship, which the player will control. Click with your right mouse button on the map of the sprite, hover over Create and create a new sprite. Now we can make the visual representation of the player. Rename the file to sprite player and change the size by pressing on this button and change the width to 128. About this, it's always good to have an image size that you can duplicate, so 128, 64 by 64 and so on. Click on Apply. Click on Edit Image to create your own image from scratch. Toggle the grid on to have a better overview. This is the view of 16 by 16. Another trick is to use the Control button on your keyboard and the mouse scroll to zoom in and zoom out, which works in everywhere in the game engine, so also here. So, okay. We continue. I like this view to have a clear view to see where there is the turret. The turret should be in the middle, so it is easier to later on spawn the bullets from that position. Like turret. And I'm going to create something like a ship. You can be creative here. I just think I just use exactly the grids to create this ship. I will select it all with my magic wand and we'll change the color into green. And in this way we have the ship finished. Close the sprite editor, click on Object, right mouse button, hover over Create and create the object. Now we are going to make the movement of the player. Name the object OBJ player, give the sprite that you just made in the folder sprites, sprite player, and add the event create to be able to spawn the player exactly in the middle of the scene. So jump to point. We can do this just by counting it up, because I'm going to use the screen size 1920 by 1080 and then minus 128, that would be make 952. We can also do this by creating a simple line of code which use the room width divided by 2 and minus sprite width divided by 2. In this way you get exactly the sprite on the X position in the middle of your screen, and this one is not counting. Even if I change the room size, it will always be in the middle of the scene. Please be aware to uncheck the relative box on the 952, because this is an exact value and we don't want to take it in a relative position. We also want to set a friction. We go to movement and select set friction. I will put it on 1. This makes it that the player stop immediately with movement if it doesn't press any key down. For the movement we will use a simple key down. Left movement direction to the left. Give it set speed. I like to use 8, and we can even copy this, copy event and paste it. down right. And just change the direction fix to the right side. To make it able to let the player shoot some bullets, we first need to create the sprite. So create sprite, and then we will assign a new sprite. We make a new edit image, check in the grid, take your rectangle tool, make it wide, and place a bullet exactly in the middle of your fields. Like this. Rename it like sprite bullet. And change the sprite alignment to the center, top center. In this way the bullet will spawn on the right position. Create a new bullet object, create object, select the bullet sprite, so go to folder sprite and select bullet. At this moment we just rename it and open the function and select your object layer. In the create function we will create 2 new variables for the shooting function. So the variable, for example, name it shoot, and we use a boolean. A boolean means that it either can be true or false, and we set it on true. And we want a variable rapid fire to check if the player is constantly pressing the spacebar, and we don't want to make it too easy. And we also assign the true value. Now we created the variables, we are going to assign key pressed spacebar. Now we want to use an if expression. So if shoot is true, we are going to make a block of simple code. So create instance. We drag it, very important with the if expression. At this moment you see that it's empty. We drag the block functions in it, so then you see there is a connection between the if expression and the create instance. And then we click on the object, the bullet. Remember the size of the bullet is smaller than our ship, so we need to add the size. Like 128 minus 64 is 64. And we do it again for the I value, plus 64. And we check in relative. So it will be extra 64 pixels of the ship extra. And then the bullet should be exactly on the right spot, because we made a turret in the center. So now we are going to change the variable that we just created. So here, common variable, that variable shoot, and the value false. This directly makes that we can only shoot 1 bullet and then it stops. Okay, now we want to add an extra expression. As you see, the screen is a bit tiny, so we can use the Control and the middle mouse button to click and hold to drag the scene. In this way we have more space to create a new expression. We want to create a new expression because we want to double check if the player is holding the spacebar. So we are not going to add this if expression in the earlier if expression statement, but make a new one which is separate, and we'll test if the rapid fire is true. Rapid fire is true. Then something happened. And another one, if expression, if rapid fire is false. So we want to set for both expression and set alarm. The only thing is, when there's a rapid fire, you want to have a longer time to wait. In GameMaker there are different seconds. It depends on your screen FPS, like the frames per second. But I think it is a nice value to have 7 and 3. So there's still some delay, but not too much. And now we want to create the alarm. Set alarm and give the alarm shoot will be the boolean true, so we can shoot again. The next step is to create an empty object controller. Create object without any sprites to draw the UI of the player controller. We want to keep it visible and just use the inbuilt instance values from GameMaker. You can find them by scrolling down in the menu and go to instance variables. Set score to 0, set lives to 3. Or whatever you want. Create a new event step to check if the player is dead. So those expressions are also at the instance. Scroll down here, if lives are equal or less than equal to 0, and search for restart room and add it on the if statement of checking if the player is dead or not. Now we want to draw the UI, so draw UI. Before creating the UI, I like to duplicate the sprite, the player sprite, double click on it, change the name to lives, and make it 60 to 64, so it's a lot smaller. 64, and apply. Edit the image, so the color will also be different. I like to take one of the reds, close it, and we have a new sprite, which we can use in the object controller to draw the sprites. Go back to the draw UI, so draw, transform value, caption will be score, and we will call the global variable of D&D score in GameMaker, score D&D, X value 50, I value 20, scaling up the font to 2 because the standard is very small. Draw another word for lives. Don't give it any value. It is fine, it is just plain text. Place it on 1680 and the I value on 20. Scale on 2. Scale as well. And draw the value of the lives that we just created, the sprite of lives. X value 1800 and the I value on 20. And we want to add the white color because this is a whole block, and all of the text we want in white. Now we want to create the enemies. This time I'm not going to make the sprites myself, even though I can. I already found them online, and I will just use the import button. Locate your file that you find online and made by yourself. I found this image online on the webpage freepng.com. Note that the sprite is far too big, like 512 by 512, so I'm going to change it into 64 by 64. And I'm going to rename it Sprite Alien 1. We want to adapt the sprites into our game, so we want to change the sprite into white, select all the black pieces and change it into white with the buckets. Unselect the magic wand and create a duplicate of the sprite because we want to make a tiny animation. So we take this block and move it a bit to the left, so to the mouth, and take the other side of his tentacle and move it to the other side. Yeah, one detail about Space Invaders is where octopus and all those kind of sea creatures. As enemies, close this screen And well, we can check the animation, but it's like very fast. So we want to change the frame per second to, for example, 2. And then you have a very simple, smooth, old classic animation. And for the other alien we do exactly the same. Create a new sprite. Import the other image. Open it. Change name. To change the size. 4. Change the FPS. Edit image. Change it all into white. Let's see, like left eye. Deselect. And create a duplicate. Take one of his arms, drag it up, take his other arm and drag it up for a simple animation. Now we will create the enemies. Create the objects. Object alien 1. The first alien I want to come down to the player and also shoot at a random loop. So alien 1, which is a more dangerous one, will be the octopus kind of alien. 8. Set direction. Fix. Set direction fix to below and set the speed to 1.2 to make it quite easy, and set an alarm. I want to use a random counter so that every time it counts when it's going to shoot at you. And I will take a very high value so it will be not too often, because we are having more of one alien in the scene. Before we can create the alarm, we should duplicate the bullet and create the instance object, the other bullet, which we will give another behavior than the bullet from the player. And reset this alarm by itself, random again. Be aware to set the enemy bullet on relative position, otherwise it will spawn on the X value and Y value 0. And we will add the event outside of the room, and then restart level as well, because then you lost. Duplicate the alien, Ctrl D, and rename it to object alien 2. Double click on it, open the create, delete the alarm, and delete the event alarm as well. And change the sprite into the alien 2 sprite. And now we are going to give the bullet a behavior. Create the event, create set speed. Use your middle mouse to change it. Set speed is already here. Vertical -8. So it goes up. This is the bullet of the player. Collision objects alien 1. Destroy instance. Destroy the other. And also destroy itself. And we like to add some score, so we scroll down to instances, add set variable set score, score plus 30 because this alien is a lot harder. Click on relative and connect it with the object controller because the object controller controls the score. Duplicate this alien, duplicate events, collision, alien 2. Save this because this warning doesn't really matter. And add the score 10. And we want the event other outside of room to delete the bullets that are not on the scene anymore. So, and double click on the bullet 5 to rename it into enemy bullet. Add the event create, and instead going up, the bullet goes down. So vertical speed of 10. Now we need to create a collision with the enemy bullets on the player. So collision objects, enemy bullet, and try to find set lives, but that one is not easy to type in. I don't know why GameMaker don't let us search for that, but you can scroll to the instances and here set lives, lives -1, and click on relative and destroy the instance. And not the player, but destroy the bullet. Be aware that set lives itself is now connected with the object player. So please be aware to select the object controller. And now we can duplicate this event. Duplicate and say collision objects alien 1, having the warning, save, doesn't matter, and duplicate this event as well. Collision objects alien 2. And in the same way we imported the PNG in our folder, we can also import, for example, the sound. For example, create sound and click on choose sound file and find your file. And then you can, for example, play sound and select the file that you want. And you can toggle on if it loops or if it's not. But it's a very simple way to add sound in GameMaker, so I'm not going to deliberate on that. So now we have all pieces together. We want to open the room and add all the pieces in the room. The room opens like this. Often you will just have the editor automatically open. If it doesn't open out of itself, just add the room properties so we can adjust that. For example, I told you guys we are going to make the room size 1920 to 1080. Now we can just drag in the player. Doesn't matter where you drag the player because the player has a fixed position, which doesn't count for the aliens, and the object controller also has fixed position, so it doesn't matter where you place them. For the aliens itself, you need to place them somewhere here. For example, you can hold Ctrl and Alt to make a line of same images, so you kind of create a stamp like this and another line. I see that sometimes the stamp doesn't like always fit, but it's okay. You can always just drag the alien in itself. Drag in some more alien lines. It doesn't really matter where you place it. It's just basically what you want to create for the players. Slow. If you want to make it difficult or not. For example, these are the aliens that shoot bullets. And these are the aliens that doesn't. I see that these are a lot bigger. And now we will check why this alien is so big. So maybe didn't scale well. Well, as you see, the size changed itself into 8:7. It doesn't make sense. I'm just going to force it to really use 64 by 64, so we really know where the sprites will be on the scene. Okay, just drag in the aliens where you want and create something like this. Maybe something else, like what do you feel would be a nice army of strange octopus alien army that the Atari developers long time ago has thought about. You can toggle off the grid and on what you like to place the images. Now we can test it. Just press the F5 button or run, and I immediately see that we need to make the sprite of the lives a lot smaller to fit. So we go to Sprite Lives and change the size again, but this time to 42 to 32. Apply and check if it looks better now. And press F5 to check again. Everything should work now. See? Shooting, lives, and score. This is of course just a small adaptation of Space Invaders, and you can change all the things to your own needs and desires. Just let me know if you really want me to continue with this game, or if next week we are going to make another game. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you will miss none of my videos.